Hi.
The tournament arena erupted as Jaxon delivered the final blow, his opponent crashing to bloodied sand. I watched from the healer's pavilion, ceremonial robes marking my honored position at Princess Valentina's wedding tournament. Then Jaxon stumbled, crimson blooming across his chest where a hidden blade found its mark. The crowd's cheers turned to gasps. "Healer!" Princess Valentina shrieked. "Save him!" I rushed forward, heart steady with absolute confidence. This was my calling, my gift that had saved countless lives before. Jaxon lay dying, his life essence pooling beneath him. Without hesitation, I drew my ceremonial blade and made the sacred cut, letting drops of my healing gift fall onto his wounds. The effect was immediate and terrifying. Jaxon's eyes flew open with wild, desperate hunger I had never seen before. He reached for my bleeding wrist with trembling fingers, drawing my essence to his lips greedily. "More," he gasped, his touch burning against my skin. "I need more." "Don't stop." I tried pulling away in shock, but he held fast, eyes now completely black with unnatural craving. This had never happened before, my healing had always worked perfectly. "What have you done?" Princess Valentina's voice cracked. "You've made him a beast. This witch destroyed our champion." Alpha Tyler roared, Jaxon's own brother condemning me. "Banish her. Cast her out." The guards seized my arms as the crowd's adoration turned to hatred. They dragged me from the arena while Jaxon still reached for me, pleading for more of my essence like a man possessed. Cast into the wilderness with nothing but disgrace, I stared at my hands in horror. My gift had twisted into something monstrous without warning, without cause. A cold promise burned in my chest like molten steel. I would remember every face that condemned me, every voice that cheered my exile. They would all pay for destroying me over a curse I never asked for, and when I returned, they would beg for the mercy they never showed me. Months have passed since my exile, and I've learned that numbness is a mercy the heart grants when betrayal cuts too deep to survive intact. The neutral territories stretch endlessly before me, a wasteland of dead trees and forgotten paths where outcasts like myself come to disappear, and I've grown comfortable in this desolation because it mirrors the hollow space where my compassion once lived. Every instinct that once drove me to heal now lies dormant, deliberately smothered beneath layers of bitter resolve, and when I encounter the wounded travelers who occasionally cross my path, a limping merchant, a fever-struck child, a bleeding hunter, I force myself to look away and continue walking. The irony isn't lost on me that my blood, once celebrated as a gift from the goddess, now serves as a curse that turns healing into addiction, but I've stopped questioning the cruel humor of fate and simply accepted that I am poison walking in human form. Today the ancient oak calls to me with its massive trunk scarred by lightning strikes in time, offering shelter from the autumn rain that has been falling since dawn, and as I settle into the natural hollow between its roots, my fingers brush against something foreign wedged deep in the bark. The paper crinkles like old skin as I extract it, unfolding edges that have been protected from the elements by the tree's embrace, and my breath catches when I recognize the desperate handwriting that covers the page in frantic loops and jagged lines. "Please, if anyone finds this, I am Lily Wolf, trapped at Weeping Rock with nowhere else to turn, carrying a child that will destroy everything if the truth emerges, because this baby belongs to Tyler Wolf himself, my dead husband's father, conceived in shame and desperation when grief made us both forget our duties." The words blur as my hands begin to tremble, not from cold but from the sudden rush of possibility that floods through my deadened senses, because here in my grasp is something more valuable than gold or magic, leverage against the man who stood before hundreds of witnesses and demanded my execution. Tyler Wolf, the Alpha who declared me a witch and called for my death while his own family crumbled from their hidden sins, has created his own weapon of destruction through his weakness and lust, and for the first time since that terrible day at the tournament, I feel something stir in the ashes of my heart that might be satisfaction. The letter continues with details that make my pulse quicken, dates that confirm the timeline, locations where their secret meetings occurred, and most damning of all, Lily's confession that she chose this path deliberately to punish Tyler for failing to protect her husband during the border wars. She writes of Weeping Rock as her chosen refuge, that cursed place where women once came to birth children in secret, and I realize she must be close to delivering if she's seeking such desperate sanctuary. The implications unfold in my mind like a carefully orchestrated symphony of revenge, each note more perfect than the last, because Tyler Wolf's precious bloodline will now carry the stain of his own dishonor, and his heir will be born from the very adultery he condemns in others. My fingers trace the words again, memorizing every detail of his downfall, and I can almost taste the bitter satisfaction of watching him realize that his greatest enemy holds the future of his lineage in her hands. The rain grows heavier as I plan my journey north, washing away the dust of aimless wandering and replacing it with the sharp clarity of purpose I'd forgotten could exist, and I picture Tyler's face when he discovers that the woman he tried to destroy has returned with his most shameful secret wrapped in swaddling clothes. The child will be innocent of his father's sins, but innocence has never protected anyone from the consequences of their bloodline's choices, and I feel a dark smile curve my lips as I imagine raising Tyler's heir to call me mother while his true father watches helplessly from the shadows. My mind races with the possibilities as rain patters against the oak's canopy above, each drop marking time that might be slipping away if Lily has already given birth or worse, if she's died alone with her secrets intact. But if she lives, if the child lives, then Tyler Wolf's greatest enemy now holds the key to his complete destruction, and the sweet taste of potential revenge fills my mouth like honey laced with poison. I fold the letter carefully and tuck it inside my cloak, feeling its weight against my heart like a promise, then rise and step back into the rain with purpose burning in my veins for the first time since my exile began. Weeping Rock lies 2 days north through treacherous mountain passes, but I've survived worse journeys and endured greater hardships, and now I have a destination that offers something more precious than mere survival, the chance to watch Tyler Wolf's world crumble just as mine did when he pointed his finger and branded me a monster before the crowd. The thought of his precious reputation crashing down around him fills me with a warmth that the rain cannot touch, and for the first time since my disgrace, I allow myself to smile as I disappear into the mist-shrouded forest, carrying secrets that will reshape the future of us all. My feet quicken along the treacherous path that winds up Weeping Rock's ancient face despite every rational thought screaming that I should turn back before I become entangled in someone else's tragedy. 2 days of relentless travel through mountain passes shrouded in perpetual mist have brought me to this moment, where the legendary refuge reveals itself as a shallow cave carved into red stone, its entrance marked by generations of desperate women who sought sanctuary in its shadows. Lily's moans echo from within the hollow space, raw and primal sounds that speak of a labor progressed far beyond the point where help might have made a difference, and I pause at the threshold knowing that whatever happens next will forever alter the trajectory of my carefully planned revenge. She lies on a bed of moss and salvaged blankets, her dark hair plastered to her skull with sweat, her face contorted in agony that transcends the physical pain of childbirth to encompass something deeper and more devastating than mere bodily suffering. "You came," she gasps when her eyes focus on my silhouette blocking the cave entrance, and the relief in her voice nearly breaks through the protective numbness I've cultivated like armor around my heart. I wasn't sure anyone would find the letter, wasn't sure anyone would care enough to help a woman marked by shame. Her words carry the bitter taste of isolation I recognize too well, the particular flavor of abandonment that comes when society decides your very existence threatens their moral order, and despite my intentions to remain detached, I find myself moving toward her with the automatic grace of a healer responding to crisis. The baby crowns as I kneel beside her makeshift birthing bed, and instinct overrides everything else as I guide the tiny form into the world with hands that remember their purpose even when my heart has forgotten how to feel. Connor emerges slick and perfect, his lungs filling with air as he releases a cry that echoes off the cave walls like a proclamation of defiance against all who would deny his right to exist. And for a moment I simply stare at this small miracle whose very presence will reshape the balance of power between enemies. Lily's breathing grows shallow as I place her son on her chest, her body surrendering to blood loss that my healing gifts could stop if I dared to risk exposure. But she grips my wrist with surprising strength before I can reach for the herbal supplies in my pack. "Listen to me carefully," she whispers, her voice carrying the urgency of someone racing against time itself. "Tyler Wolf destroyed my husband through his pride and political games, sent him to die on a border patrol that should have been routine, then came to my bed speaking of comfort and duty while his son's body was still warm in the ground." The hatred in her failing voice burns brighter than the fever consuming her strength, and I lean closer to catch every word of her confession because these may be the final weapons she can forge against the man who wronged us both. "This child is Tyler's bastard, conceived in my need for revenge against the Alpha who treated my husband as expendable, and I want you to take him and raise him to know the truth about his bloodline's cruelty." Her fingers dig into my skin with desperate intensity as she continues, "Let Tyler's heir grow up calling his greatest enemy mother. Let him love you more than he could ever love the man whose weakness created him, and when the time comes for revelation, let Tyler know that his own flesh and blood chose the woman he tried to destroy." The words hit me like lightning striking the same tree twice, illuminating possibilities I hadn't dared imagine even in my darkest fantasies of revenge. Because here lies the perfect weapon wrapped in innocent flesh, a child who could grow up as my son while serving as Tyler's ultimate downfall. Lily's eyes begin to lose focus as her life ebbs away drop by crimson drop, but she summons enough strength for one final plea that cuts through my hardened heart like a blade finding its mark. "Promise me he'll know he was wanted, that someone chose to love him despite the circumstances of his birth, because every child deserves to feel valued even if their existence serves a greater purpose." The words pierce something deep inside me that I thought had died at the tournament, awakening memories of my own childhood spent wondering why the goddess had cursed me with blood that poisoned instead of healed, remembering nights when I questioned whether anyone would ever choose to love something so fundamentally broken. I make the vow because something in her desperation echoes my own abandoned childhood, and because in this moment I realize that revenge might taste sweeter when seasoned with genuine affection rather than cold calculation. Her hand goes limp in mine as dawn breaks over Weeping Rock, painting the cave walls crimson with morning light that seems to bless this strange beginning, and I gather Connor against my chest feeling his warmth seep through my clothes to touch places in my soul I thought had died forever. The baby's weight settles against me with surprising rightness, as if some part of me had been waiting for this moment without knowing it, and when his tiny fist curls around my finger with instinctive trust, something cracks open inside my chest that I'm not ready to examine too closely. The irony tastes bitter as honey on my tongue. I came seeking a weapon and instead found something that might be salvation, though whether it saves or damns us both remains to be written in the years ahead. For weeks I've lived in constant terror that my cursed blood might poison the one pure thing that's entered my life since exile began. Connor sleeps in a makeshift cradle fashioned from soft moss and salvaged fabric, his tiny chest rising and falling with the steady rhythm of innocence, while I maintain careful distance between us because every instinct screams that my touch could corrupt his perfect existence. The leather gloves never leave my hands, not even when I sleep, because the memory of what my blood did to Jaxon burns like acid in my veins, and I cannot bear the thought of watching this beautiful child beg for more of my poison the way the tournament champion did before hundreds of horrified witnesses. Each feeding requires elaborate precautions as I warm goat's milk over carefully tended fires, testing every drop on my own tongue first to ensure no trace of my essence has contaminated his nourishment. Because the weight of Lily's dying words presses against my heart like a stone and I refuse to fail the only trust anyone has placed in me since my disgrace. The irony cuts deep that I, who once healed with a touch, now fear my own skin as if it were forged from molten silver, and Connor's innocent reaching toward my face becomes a dance of careful evasion that breaks my heart even as it protects his life. Sleep eludes me most nights as I watch over him from across our small sanctuary, memorizing the curve of his cheek and the way starlight catches in his dark hair, wondering how long I can maintain this distance before he begins to sense my rejection and interpret it as abandonment rather than protection. Today marks 6 weeks since his birth, and Connor has grown strong despite my cautious care, his eyes bright with intelligence that seems to catalog every detail of our hidden world. But as I lean over his cradle to adjust his blanket, disaster strikes with the swift brutality of fate's cruelest jokes. The knife I used to prepare his food slips from my clumsy, gloved fingers and catches his tiny palm as he reaches for the glinting blade, drawing a thin line of crimson that makes my heart stop beating as I watch my worst nightmare unfold in slow motion. Blood wells from the shallow cut, precious and perfect, and panic floods my system as I realize I must clean the wound but cannot risk touching him with my bare skin, so I fumble for clean cloth while Connor's cries fill the cave with accusation that pierces my soul. My own glove tears on a sharp stone as I reach for supplies, and before I can stop the inevitable, my bare-fingered tip brushes against his bleeding palm in a moment of contact that should herald his destruction. I wait for the change to begin, for his innocent eyes to fill with the desperate hunger I've seen before, for his tiny body to convulse with the addiction that marks my touch. But instead something impossible happens that shatters every belief I've held about the poison flowing through my veins. Connor's blood mingles with the drop that escapes my torn skin, and rather than corruption spreading through his system, I watch in stunned amazement as his essence neutralizes mine, transforming the toxic crimson into something pure and healing that closes his wound without leaving even the faintest scar. The sensation that floods through me defies description, like drinking cool water after years of thirst, like breathing clean air after suffocation, like feeling sunlight on skin that has known only shadow, and for the first time since my curse manifested, I experience what it means to touch another being without bringing harm. Tears stream down my face as I strip away the remaining glove and press my palm fully against his, skin to skin, watching wonder replace fear in his bright eyes as my toxic blood loses its power in the presence of his miraculous gift. Connor gurgles with delight at finally receiving the contact he's craved, his tiny fingers exploring my face with fearless curiosity while I sob with relief and gratitude that threatens to overwhelm my carefully constructed emotional barriers. The child I took as a weapon against his father has become something far more precious than revenge. He is salvation itself, wrapped in innocent flesh and crowned with the power to transform poison into healing, hatred into hope, exile into belonging. Hours pass as I hold him properly for the first time, marveling at how perfectly he fits against my chest, how his warmth seeps through my clothes to touch places in my soul I thought had died forever. How his trust rewrites the story I've told myself about being untouchable and damned. The implications spin through my mind like autumn leaves caught in a whirlwind, because if Connor can neutralize my curse, then perhaps other impossibilities might also prove to be illusions. Perhaps the future holds more than the simple satisfaction of watching Tyler Wolf's world crumble when he discovers his heir calls his enemy mother. The magnitude of this discovery reverberates through every carefully laid plan I've constructed around revenge, because how can I use this innocent child as a weapon when he has given me the greatest gift imaginable, the ability to touch without destroying, to love without poisoning, to exist in the world as something other than a walking curse. My fingers trace the soft curve of his cheek again and again, drunk on the sensation of skin meeting skin without consequence, and each gentle caress rewrites the narrative of my exile from despair to wonder. The cave seems warmer now, filled with possibilities I never dared imagine, and even the shadows dancing on the walls appear softer, less threatening, as if the very air has been transformed by the miracle of Connor's gift. Night falls over our hidden sanctuary as Connor sleeps peacefully in my arms, his breathing deep and content, and I find myself whispering promises I never expected to make, vows of protection and love that have nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with the fierce maternal instinct that has awakened in the presence of this miraculous child. The stars visible through the cave entrance seem brighter tonight, and for the first time since my disgrace, I dare to hope that perhaps the goddess hasn't abandoned me after all. That perhaps she has simply been waiting for the right moment to show me that even curses can be transformed into blessings when love enters the equation.
The scent trail leads me through territory I haven't walked in decades, past forgotten landmarks that mark the boundaries between civilization and the wild places where secrets go to die. And every instinct screams that I'm closing in on the most dangerous quarry I've ever hunted. 3 months of relentless tracking have brought me to this moment, following whispers and rumors through taverns where outlaws gather, bribing information from smugglers who trade in more than contraband, piecing together the fragments of Lily's escape route like a puzzle written in blood and desperation. My wolves flank me in perfect formation, their enhanced senses cataloging every detail of the forest around us, but it's my own nose that catches the faint trace of birthing blood carried on the evening wind, confirming what my heart already knows with terrible certainty. She gave birth here in these neutral lands, far from healers or midwives, and someone helped her through the ordeal because no woman could survive such isolation alone, especially not while carrying the bastard child that could destroy everything I've built through decades of careful political maneuvering. The ancestral curse burns in my veins like liquid fire, the insatiable hunger for power that has driven my bloodline to madness for 7 generations, and it whispers seductive promises about what I could accomplish if only I eliminate this final threat to my legacy. Every step deeper into the forest feeds the darkness growing inside me, the primal need to dominate and consume that transforms rational thought into predatory instinct, and I feel my humanity slipping away like sand through desperate fingers as the curse tightens its grip on my soul. The tracking becomes easier as we near Weeping Rock, that legendary refuge where desperate women have sought sanctuary since time immemorial, and my enhanced hearing picks up the echo of recent activity in the ancient cave system that honeycombs the mountain's face. Blood scents linger here, layered with the musk of fear and the copper tang of childbirth, but underneath it all lurks something else that makes my wolf pace restlessly beneath my skin, a familiar essence that shouldn't exist in this place of exile and abandonment. My lead tracker signals the discovery of a shallow grave hidden among the roots of an ancient oak, and the scent that rises from the disturbed earth confirms my worst suspicions, even as it fills me with a rage so pure it threatens to shatter what remains of my self-control. Lily lies beneath a cairn of carefully placed stones, her body wrapped in cloth that still carries traces of her final moments, and the knowledge that she died giving birth to my shame burns through me like acid, leaving guilt and fury warring for dominance in the hollow space where my conscience once lived. But the child's scent is absent from this makeshift tomb, which means someone took him before the earth claimed his mother, someone skilled enough to hide their trail from my best hunters, someone who understood the value of the weapon they now possessed. The implications crash over me like a tide of molten silver, because if my enemies have claimed my bastard son, then they hold leverage that could topple kingdoms, especially if they discover the truth about the curse that drives my bloodline toward inevitable self-destruction. My wolves whine softly as the curse's influence spreads through the pack bond, carrying my hunger and rage to them like a contagion, and I watch their eyes begin to glow with the same unnatural light that marks my own descent into madness. The need to find my son intensifies beyond reason or strategy, becoming a compulsion that drowns out every other consideration, because the child represents both my greatest vulnerability and my last hope for redemption from the darkness that has claimed every alpha in my family tree. Night falls as we make camp near the grave, and I lie awake listening to the wind carry secrets through the trees, tasting traces of familiar magic on the air that make my blood sing with recognition even as my mind rejects the impossible implications. The scent that haunts the edges of my consciousness belongs to the woman I condemned at the tournament, the healer whose blood turned healing into addiction, whose exile I demanded before hundreds of witnesses who still whisper her name like a curse. Skylar Reese, the witch who destroyed my brother's sanity and threatened the stability of royal bloodlines, somehow walks these neutral lands, carrying my most precious secret in her arms, and the cosmic joke of it makes me want to howl with laughter or rage until the mountains themselves crack under the weight of my fury. She took my son not by accident but by design, recognizing the perfect weapon that fell into her hands like a gift from vengeful gods, and now she holds the power to unmake everything I've spent my life building simply by revealing the truth about his parentage to my enemies. The curse feeds on this knowledge, growing stronger with each breath as it whispers about the delicious irony of being destroyed by the very woman I tried to eliminate, and I feel my sanity fraying at the edges like rope left too long in the weather. My trackers report fresh signs leading deeper into the neutral territories, toward the ancient forests where magic still flows wild and untamed, and I know with bone-deep certainty that our paths will cross again soon in a confrontation that will determine whether my lineage survives or burns in the flames of perfectly orchestrated revenge. Somewhere in these neutral lands, the woman I condemned is a witch now holds my future in her arms, and the cosmic irony of that fact tastes like ashes and bitter wine as I plan the confrontation that will determine whether my lineage survives or perishes in the flames of long overdue justice. The curse whispers seductive promises about the power I could claim if I simply embraced the darkness completely, abandon the pretense of honor that has held me back, and take what belongs to me regardless of the cost in blood and innocence. But beneath the hunger lies a deeper fear that has nothing to do with political consequences and everything to do with the growing certainty that my greatest enemy might be the only person capable of saving what remains of my soul.
2 years have passed since that miraculous night when Connor's touch freed me from the prison of my own cursed skin. And every dawn brings new wonder as I watch him grow from helpless infant into a bright-eyed child whose laughter echoes through our hidden grove like music I never knew my soul craved. The seasons have turned our sanctuary into something approaching paradise, with wildflowers carpeting the forest floor where Connor takes his first wobbling steps, and fruit trees that I've coaxed to life with my restored healing gifts providing sustenance for our unconventional family. His development astounds me daily as he learns to navigate the world with fearless curiosity, his small hands reaching for butterflies that seem drawn to his gentle spirit, his babbling attempts at speech creating a language only we understand in the safety of our isolated haven. The word that changes everything slips from his lips on a morning when golden sunlight filters through the canopy above us, clear and unmistakable as he points to me with chubby fingers and declares with perfect enunciation that breaks my heart wide open. "Mama," he says, and the simple syllable carries the weight of every prayer I never dared whisper, every dream I buried beneath layers of bitterness and revenge, every hope that love might find me even in the wilderness of my exile. Tears blur my vision as I gather him into my arms, feeling the solid warmth of his small body against my chest, breathing in the sweet scent of his hair that carries traces of morning dew and innocent trust, and for a moment the entire world narrows to this perfect bubble of contentment that nothing can touch. The irony tastes sweeter than honey on my tongue because the child I stole as an instrument of vengeance has become the greatest gift the universe could have bestowed, transforming my empty existence into something rich with purpose and unconditional love that asks nothing of me except presence and protection. Our daily routines have evolved into cherished rituals that mark the passage of time in our hidden paradise, From the morning walks where Connor points excitedly at every bird and flower while I name each living thing in the ancient language my grandmother taught me, to the evening stories I weave from memories and imagination while he falls asleep in my lap. He calls every creature we encounter by names of his own invention, chattering to the rabbits in serious tones as if discussing matters of great importance, and his fearless approach to life reminds me daily that innocence is not weakness but strength of a kind I'd forgotten could exist. Teaching him to identify safe plants and avoid dangerous ones becomes a game of discovery that delights us both, his quick mind absorbing knowledge with the hunger of someone born to learn, and I find myself remembering the joy of healing before it became a curse, the satisfaction of nurturing life instead of destroying it. The questions begin as his vocabulary expands, innocent inquiries about the world beyond our grove that pierce my heart with their simplicity, and when he asks about his father with the casual curiosity of a child who knows no shame, I struggle to find words that honor truth without destroying the peace we've built together. "Where is Papa?" he asks one afternoon while we tend the herb garden that has become my pride and joy, his small fingers carefully placing seeds in neat rows as I've taught him, and the weight of that question settles on my shoulders like a mantle woven from guilt and love in equal measure. The easy answer would be to tell him that Papa is far away, that perhaps someday they will meet, but something in his earnest expression demands more honesty than my carefully constructed lies can provide, and I find myself torn between protecting his innocence and honoring the truth that will shape his future. "Papa doesn't know about you yet," I finally manage, the words tasting like ash in my mouth because they carry so much more meaning than his young mind can comprehend, but someday he will, and when that day comes, everything will change. He accepts this explanation with the trusting faith of a child who believes his mother holds all the answers to life's mysteries, then returns to his planting with renewed focus, humming a tune of his own creation that seems to make the flowers bloom brighter in response to his joy. The weight of my original intentions presses against my conscience like a stone as I watch him work, because somewhere in the transformation from weapon to son, I've lost the burning desire for revenge that once sustained me through the darkest nights of exile. Tyler Wolf still deserves to pay for what he did to me, for the public humiliation and the demand for my execution, but the thought of using this innocent child to inflict that pain now feels like sacrilege against everything pure and beautiful that has grown between us. Connor's trust in me is absolute and unquestioning, the kind of faith that exists only between a child and the person they consider their whole world, and I marvel at how this perfect love has grown from such imperfect soil, how redemption can bloom in places where only bitterness once took root. The wooden toys I carve for him during winter evenings become treasured companions that accompany him on every adventure, and watching him create elaborate stories for each figure reminds me that imagination is perhaps the most precious gift a parent can nurture in their child. His favorite is the wooden wolf that I shaped with trembling hands during a particularly cold night when memories of his father haunted my dreams, and though Connor doesn't know the significance of the creature he hugs so tightly, I find strange comfort in the fact that some part of Tyler's legacy brings his son joy rather than pain. Night falls over our sanctuary as Connor sleeps peacefully in the bed I've carved from living wood and cushioned with the softest furs, his breathing deep and content, one small hand curled around the wooden wolf I carved for him during the long winter months when storytelling became our primary entertainment. The stars shine brighter in our hidden grove, unobscured by the smoke and noise of civilization, and I lie awake wondering if the love I feel for this child is strong enough to overcome the hatred that brought us together, if redemption can grow from the soil of revenge like flowers blooming in a graveyard.
Months of relentless hunting culminating in this moment, where every carefully laid plan crumbles beneath the weight of what I discover bathing in the crystal stream that winds through their sanctuary. My son, the bastard child whose existence threatens everything I've built, splashes happily in the shallow water, while the woman I condemned as a witch watches over him with protective tenderness that makes my chest tighten with emotions I refuse to acknowledge. Kana has grown into a beautiful child whose features mirror my own so perfectly that denial becomes impossible, his dark hair catching sunlight like spun shadow, his laugh carrying the musical quality that marked my bloodline before the curse twisted our joy into hunger. The sight of him should fill me with rage or cold calculation, but instead I find myself frozen behind the concealment of ancient pines, watching this domestic scene unfold with something dangerously close to wonder stirring in the hollow space where my heart once beat without the curse's influence. Skylar Reese moves with fluid grace as she tends to my son, her movements careful and loving as she pours warm water over his small shoulders, and the transformation in her appearance strikes me like lightning illuminating a storm-darkened sky. Gone is the broken woman who fled my territory in disgrace, replaced by someone who radiates contentment and purpose, her skin glowing with health, her eyes bright with joy that seems to emanate from some internal source of light. The cursed hunger that has driven me to madness for 2 years suddenly eases in her presence, the relentless burning in my veins cooling to mere warmth, and I realize with dawning horror that my body recognizes something in her essence that my mind cannot accept. She sings softly to Connor in the ancient tongue as she bathes him, her voice weaving melodies that seem to make the very air shimmer with magic, and my son responds with delighted squeals that pierce through the armor I've built around my soul like arrows finding their mark. "Mama, look," Connor calls out, pointing to a butterfly that has landed on his outstretched finger, and the casual way he claims her as family sends a spike of possessive fury through my system that has nothing to do with paternal instinct and everything to do with the alpha in me that recognizes a rival's claim on what belongs to me. The irony burns like acid in my throat, because the woman I tried to destroy has accomplished what I never could. She has created a family from the ashes of betrayal, built love from the soil of exile, and transformed my greatest shame into something that looks suspiciously like happiness. My approach through the undergrowth is silent as death itself, decades of hunting experience allowing me to move without disturbing so much as a fallen leaf. But Connor's head turns toward my hiding place with uncanny awareness, his bright eyes finding mine through gaps in the foliage. "Mama," he says with the matter-of-fact tone of a child announcing something perfectly obvious, "there's a man watching us." And Skylar's entire body goes rigid with recognition even before she turns to face the ghost of her past, stepping into their sunlit paradise. Her eyes meet mine across the stream with an expression that cycles rapidly through shock, fear, defiance, and something else I cannot name, while her arms instinctively gather Connor against her chest in a gesture of protection that makes my wolf pace restlessly beneath my skin. "Hello, Skylar," I say, my voice carrying the weight of 2 years spent tracking her through wilderness and shadow. "I've come for my son." The words hang in the air between us like a blade poised to fall, and I watch her calculate distances to escape routes while Connor peers at me with open curiosity, unafraid of the predator who has invaded his mother's sanctuary. "Connor," she says carefully, never taking her eyes off me, "why don't you go gather some berries for lunch while Mama talks to this man?" But my son shakes his head with the stubborn independence that clearly runs in his bloodline. "Is this Papa?" he asks with innocent directness that cuts through pretense like a sword through silk, and the question hangs between us while the curse in my veins responds to his proximity with a hunger that has nothing to do with power and everything to do with the desperate need to claim what the darker part of my nature recognizes as mine. Skylar's face goes pale as winter frost, but she lifts her chin with defiance that reminds me why I once found her dangerous enough to destroy, and when she speaks, Her voice carries steel wrapped in velvet. "Yes, Connor," she says, pulling him closer while her eyes dare me to contradict her claim. "This is your father, and he's come to take you away from me." The naked pain in her voice when she speaks those words does something unexpected to the rage that has sustained me through 2 years of hunting, tempering fury with something that might be regret if I allowed myself such weakness. Connor studies my face with the intense concentration of a child trying to reconcile reality with the stories he's been told, then does something that stops my heart entirely. He reaches out a small hand toward me with the fearless trust of innocence. "Hello, Papa," he says with perfect solemnity, and the curse that has tormented my bloodline for generations suddenly quiets to a whisper in the presence of this miraculous child whose very existence rewrites every rule I thought governed my world.
The days that follow Tyler's arrival blur together in a haze of forced cohabitation that transforms our peaceful sanctuary into a battlefield where every glance carries the weight of unspoken threats and every word becomes a weapon wrapped in careful civility. He commands rather than requests, using his alpha authority to establish dominance over our hidden grove, and I watch helplessly as my carefully constructed world shifts to accommodate the predator who stalks through our home like he owns everything within its borders. The remote hunting lodge he forces us to becomes our new prison, a place where ancient logs and stone create walls that feel more like a cage than shelter, and though the space is larger than our cave, the air itself seems thinner when filled with the tension that crackles between Tyler and me like lightning seeking ground. Connor adapts to this upheaval with the resilience of childhood, delighted to have his father present despite the undercurrents of hostility that make every meal feel like a negotiation between warring nations, and watching their tentative interactions fills me with emotions too complex to untangle. Tyler's gentleness with his son surprises me despite my determination to see only the monster who demanded my death, his large hands incredibly careful as he teaches Connor to whittle wood or track animal prints in the soft earth around the lodge. The curse that drives him to madness seems to quiet in Connor's presence, and during those moments when father and son work together on some simple task, I catch glimpses of the man Tyler might have been without the ancestral poison flowing through his veins. My initial satisfaction at watching him struggle with the reality of his situation, his heir loves his greatest enemy more than him, gradually sours as I realize that revenge loses its sweetness when the target becomes human rather than monster. The protective instincts that have governed my relationship with Connor war constantly with the growing awareness that Tyler's need for my presence runs deeper than mere custody disputes, manifesting in the way his curse symptoms intensify whenever I leave the lodge for extended periods. He never explicitly admits his dependency, wrapping his demands in alpha authority and parental rights, but I see the relief that floods his features when I return from foraging trips, the way his shoulders lose their rigid tension when my scent fills the space again. The forced proximity creates an intimacy I never wanted, filling my awareness with details about the man I've spent 2 years hating, the way he murmurs Connor's name like a prayer when he thinks no one is listening, the careful distance he maintains from both of us as if afraid his touch might contaminate our bond. Evening comes with Tyler reading ancient texts to Connor in a voice soft enough to lull angels to sleep, his massive frame folded carefully around our son as they share the leather chair by the fireplace, and something treacherous unfurls in my chest at the sight of this domestic tableau. Connor's delighted laughter echoes through the lodge when Tyler demonstrates shifting techniques with patient explanations, and I find myself torn between gratitude that my son finally has access to his heritage and fury that the man providing these gifts is the same one who tried to destroy me. The attraction that builds between Tyler and me despite our history feels like betrayal of the highest order, a cosmic joke played by fate on two people who should be natural enemies. But I cannot deny the way my pulse quickens when his scent fills a room or how my skin tingles when he passes close enough for our arms to brush. His presence becomes a constant low-grade fever in my blood, awareness that follows me through every mundane task until I find myself cataloging the way firelight plays across his features or noticing how his eyes soften when they rest on Connor's sleeping form. The night external enemies discover our location and attack with silver weapons and coordinated strikes. Tyler and I fight side by side with lethal efficiency that surprises us both, our movements synchronizing as if we've trained together for years rather than being thrown together by circumstance. In the aftermath, with bodies scattered around our lodge and adrenaline still singing through our veins, the space between us suddenly becomes charged with something far more dangerous than hatred, and when Tyler's eyes meet mine across the blood-splattered room, I see my own desperate hunger reflected in their depths. The kiss that follows feels inevitable and catastrophic in equal measure, his hands tangling in my hair while mine grip the fabric of his shirt as if anchoring myself against the storm of sensation that threatens to drown rational thought. His mouth tastes like violence and desperation, like apologies he'll never speak and promises he can't make, and for a moment I allow myself to sink into the dangerous pleasure of being claimed by someone who sees me as more than broken healer or convenient enemy. The heat that builds between our bodies speaks a language older than words, primal recognition that transcends the rational hatred we've nurtured, and I feel myself melting against him like snow exposed to flame, my resolve crumbling beneath the weight of need I've denied for too long. His touch awakens sensations I thought had died with my exile, reminding me that beneath the armor of bitterness and revenge lives a woman who still hungers for connection, for the dangerous thrill of surrendering to someone strong enough to match my fire with his own. The scent of his arousal mingles with mine until the air itself becomes thick with unspoken promises, and when his lips find the sensitive spot where my neck meets my shoulder, I cannot suppress the small sound of pleasure that escapes my throat like a confession. The realization of what I'm doing crashes over me like ice water, and I wrench myself away from his embrace with enough force to send him stumbling backward, both of us breathing hard as we stare at each other across a chasm that seems simultaneously vast and easily bridged. "This changes nothing," I whisper, but the words taste like lies even as they leave my lips, because everything has changed in the space of a heartbeat, and we both know there's no returning to the simple hatred that brought us together in this place where love and revenge intertwine like poison and antidote in the same cup.
The clarity that floods my mind in Skylar's presence becomes my greatest gift and my most dangerous addiction, lifting the ancestral fog that has clouded my thoughts for decades and revealing truths I've spent years avoiding with the desperate ingenuity of a man running from his own reflection. For the first time since childhood, I can think without the constant whisper of hunger driving every decision toward conquest and domination, and the man I discover beneath the curse's influence horrifies me with his capacity for cruelty wrapped in righteous justification. Connor sits cross-legged on the floor before me, his small hands working carefully to tie the knots I've shown him, his tongue poking out in concentration as he masters each technique with the focused determination that marks him as my bloodline despite the circumstances of his birth. Teaching him these simple skills fills me with pride so pure it aches, untainted by the curse's need to shape him into a weapon or political tool, and I realize with dawning wonder that this is what fatherhood was meant to feel like before my family's poison corrupted every relationship into a transaction of power. "Like this, Papa?" he asks, holding up his handiwork for inspection, and the casual way he claims me as family sends warmth spreading through my chest like sunlight breaking through storm clouds, because in his innocent acceptance I find a redemption I never knew I was seeking. Skylar watches our interactions from her position by the window where she pretends to read while actually cataloging every word and gesture, her golden eyes missing nothing as she evaluates the threat I pose to the life she's built with my son. The maternal protectiveness that radiates from her should anger me, This outsider who stole my heir and raised him to love her more than his true father. But instead I find myself grudgingly grateful that Connor has known such fierce devotion during the years I spent hunting them through the wilderness. She has given him stability I never could have provided, while the curse held sway over my judgment, creating a foundation of love and security that no political alliance or territorial expansion could match, and the admission tastes bitter as medicine in my throat. The moments when my curse-addled thoughts return bring with them waves of shame that crash over me like toxic tide, forcing me to confront the monster I become when her neutralizing influence fades, and I understand why she maintains such careful distance even as my body craves her proximity like air. During the worst episodes, when the ancient hunger claws at my sanity with renewed vigor, I lock myself in the lodge's cellar until the madness passes, unwilling to let Connor witness the creature that emerges when darkness claims my soul. The memory fragments that surface during my clear moments paint a picture of the man I was before Skylar's presence offered salvation, and each recovered piece of my true self makes me more ashamed of the Alpha who demanded her execution while his own family rotted from within. I remember my son Marcus pleading for understanding when grief over his fallen comrades drove him to drink, how I dismissed his pain as weakness rather than recognizing a young man's desperate need for his father's comfort, and the knowledge that my emotional coldness pushed him toward the border patrol that claimed his life burns like acid in my veins. Lily's seduction becomes clearer in retrospect, her calculated approach to the grieving Alpha who had failed his son so completely, and I see now that she played on my guilt with surgical precision, offering her body as absolution for sins I was too proud to acknowledge. The child she bore from our affair represents every failure of leadership and compassion that the curse allowed me to justify as necessary strength, and Connor's very existence serves as living proof that my bloodline's poison has consequences beyond my own damnation. Skylar's careful attention to his needs contrasts sharply with my own distant parenting of Marcus, showing me what fatherhood looks like when practiced by someone capable of putting a child's welfare above political concerns, and watching her gentle corrections and patient explanations teaches me lessons I should have learned decades ago. The way Connor seeks her comfort when nightmares wake him in the dark hours before dawn, how he shares his small discoveries and innocent questions with complete trust in her wisdom, creates a bond one recognizes I can never replicate, because it was forged in love rather than duty. Evening finds us sharing the simple meal she's prepared from forest ingredients, Connor chattering happily about the Fox family he discovered near the stream, while Skylar and I maintain the careful politeness that masks the volatile attraction simmering beneath our surface civility. The domestic tableau should feel alien to a man raised in courts where every meal carried political implications, but instead I find myself relaxing into rhythms that feel more natural than any state dinner or formal ceremony I've ever attended. When Connor climbs into my lap after supper, his small weight settling against my chest with trusting ease, something fundamental shifts in my understanding of what it means to be worthy of such faith, and I promise him silently that I will find a way to break the cycle that has claimed every Alpha in my lineage. The curse whispers seductive lies about the power I could claim if I simply embraced the darkness fully, abandon this pretense of redemption, and take what belongs to me by right of strength and bloodline. But Connor's steady breathing against my neck drowns out the poison with something infinitely more powerful than hunger or ambition.
The desperation that drives me to attempt escape builds like pressure in a sealed vessel, threatening to shatter what remains of my sanity as I watch my carefully constructed hatred dissolve beneath the weight of emotions I never wanted to feel for the man who destroyed my life. Connor sleeps peacefully in the bed Tyler carved for him with patient hands, his breathing deep and content, unaware that his mother plans to tear his world apart again in service of a freedom that tastes increasingly hollow with each passing day. The pre-dawn darkness offers the best chance for escape, when Tyler's curse burns lowest and his enhanced senses dull with the exhaustion of maintaining human form for hours on end. But as I gather our meager possessions, every instinct screams that I'm making a terrible mistake. My son stirs when I lift him from his warm nest of furs, his sleepy eyes focusing on my face with the trusting confusion of a child roused from dreams, and when he whispers, "Mama, where are we going?" in the darkness, my heart nearly breaks from the weight of what I'm about to put him through. "We're going on an adventure," I lie, the words tasting like ashes in my mouth because I know this flight will end our peace forever, will transform us back into hunted refugees when Connor has finally found the father he never knew he needed. The forest welcomes us with familiar embrace as we slip through shadows that once offered sanctuary, but now every rustling leaf sounds like pursuit, every owl's call might herald discovery, and the very trees seem to whisper accusations about the cowardice that drives me from the only home Connor has ever known with both his parents. My son accepts our midnight journey with the adaptability that has served him well through every upheaval, chattering softly about the animals we might encounter while I struggle with the growing certainty that I'm destroying something precious in service of pride too wounded to heal. Hours pass before Tyler's roar of discovery echoes through the forest, a sound of such raw pain and fury that even the night creatures fall silent in response, and I realize with dawning horror that I've hurt him far more deeply than my revenge could ever have intended. The tracking begins immediately, his enhanced abilities cutting through every trick I learned during my exile, and I know with bone-deep certainty that he will find us because the bond between us has grown too strong to sever with mere distance. Connor begins to cry as exhaustion overtakes his small reserves, his sobs echoing through the forest like accusation and breaking down what remains of my resolve, because I see now that I'm punishing an innocent child for my own inability to accept that love can grow from the soil of hatred. "I want Papa," he wails, his tiny fists rubbing at eyes swollen with tears, and the simple words destroy every justification I've built around this flight because they reveal the truth I've been avoiding. Connor needs his father just as much as he needs me. The confrontation when Tyler finally corners us in a moonlit clearing burns with an honesty that strips away every pretense and leaves us both naked in our desperate need, his eyes wild with the fear of loss while mine blur with tears I can no longer hold back. "You would take him from me again?" Tyler asks, his voice breaking with emotion that transforms the powerful Alpha into a man facing the loss of everything that matters, and I see reflected in his face the same terror that drove my own flight. "I thought I could go back to hating you," I whisper, Connor clinging to my neck while reaching toward his father with equal desperation, "but watching you with him, seeing the man you become when the curse quiets, makes everything complicated." The admission feels like surrender and liberation in equal measure, acknowledging the truth that has been growing between us despite every rational reason to maintain our enmity. Connor's distress at being caught between his warring parents finally breaks through my stubborn pride, his innocent question, "Why can't we all be together?" forcing me to confront the simple wisdom that children possess when adults complicate everything with their wounds and pride. Tyler approaches slowly, his hands raised in supplication rather than dominance, and when he speaks, his voice carries none of the alpha command that once demanded my execution. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness for what I did to you," he says, his eyes never leaving mine while Connor squirms in my arms, desperate to reach the father he's missed for less than a day. But Connor deserves better than parents who tear him apart because they're too broken to heal together. The truth in his words cuts through the last of my resistance like a blade finding its mark, because I see now that my perfect revenge has become the very thing I never wanted. I love them both despite every rational reason to maintain my hatred. "I can't use him as a weapon against you," I confess, the words tasting like freedom and defeat wrapped together, because somewhere along the way, he stopped being your son or my tool and became our child. The acknowledgement hangs between us like a bridge across an impossible chasm, and when Tyler extends his hand toward me, not as an alpha claiming his property but as a man offering partnership, I realize that the choice before me isn't between love and revenge, but between the family we could build together and the emptiness that will consume us all if pride keeps us apart. Connor settles between us as we make our way back to the lodge, his small hands holding one of mine and one of Tyler's, creating a connection that feels more powerful than any magic or curse as we return to the home we've somehow managed to build from the ashes of betrayal and the soil of unlikely love.
Princess Valentina leads the charge with Jaxon at her side, their forces spreading through the trees in formation, designed to cut off every escape route while driving us toward the ancient temple that crowns the ridge above our lodge like a crown of broken stone. The irony tastes bitter as blood in my mouth, because the woman whose wedding tournament became the stage for our mutual destruction now returns to finish what she started, her royal pride still burning from the public humiliation of watching her chosen champion beg for Skylar's blood like a man possessed. Connor clings to Skylar's back in the carrier we fashioned for such emergencies, his wide eyes taking in the chaos around us, while his mothers move with lethal grace that transforms our peaceful sanctuary into a battlefield where mercy becomes weakness and hesitation means death. The curse responds to combat with vicious enthusiasm, flooding my system with predatory hunger that makes every enemy seem like prey to be devoured rather than opponents to be defeated, and I feel my humanity slipping away like sand through desperate fingers as the ancient poison reclaims its hold on my soul. Skylar fights beside me with fluid efficiency that speaks of years spent surviving alone in hostile territory, her movements anticipating mine, as if we've trained together for decades rather than being thrown together by fate and mutual need. Her touch during brief moments of contact sends waves of clarity through the curse's fog, allowing me to make tactical decisions based on strategy rather than bloodlust. But each separation leaves me more vulnerable to the madness that wants to consume everything in its path. The temple. She shouts over the clash of weapons and the screams of the wounded. If we can reach the temple, there might be a way to end this without more death. And something in her voice suggests she knows secrets about that ancient place that she's never shared. The running battle up the mountainside becomes a nightmare of silver weapons and desperate maneuvers, our enemies driving us toward whatever trap awaits in the ruins, where our ancestors once worshipped gods whose names have been forgotten by all but the most dedicated scholars. Jaxon's addiction-ravaged features twist with obsession as he pursues us through the trees, his movements erratic, but driven by the unnatural need Skylar's blood created in his system, and I realize that some wounds cut too deep to heal even when the weapon is removed. Princess Valentina's voice rings out with royal authority as she coordinates the assault, her tactical brilliance evident in every flanking maneuver and strategic retreat that slowly herds us toward our destination like wolves driving deer toward a cliff. The curse grows stronger with each enemy I cut down, feeding on violence until my vision begins to blur at the edges with red haze that transforms friend and foe alike into targets for the hunger that consumes my bloodline. Connor's frightened cries pierce through the battle madness like arrows finding their mark, and I realize with growing horror that I'm beginning to see him not as my son to be protected, but as a prize to be claimed, another possession to add to my collection through strength and dominance. The shift in my perception terrifies me more than any physical wound, because it represents the final victory of the curse over whatever remnants of fatherly love still exist in my corrupted heart, and I understand now why Skylar looks at me with growing fear rather than the trust that once bloomed between us. My tactical decisions become increasingly brutal as we climb toward the temple, prioritizing victory over the safety of innocence, with cold calculation that would have appalled the man I was before the curse reached this crescendo of influence. Skylar's scent becomes the only anchor, keeping me tethered to sanity as we climb toward the temple's broken spires, her presence the sole thing standing between Connor and the monster his father becomes when the curse takes full control. The ancient stones loom above us like judgmental giants, their surfaces carved with symbols that seem to shift and writhe in my peripheral vision, and something about this place resonates with the poison in my blood in ways that make my skin crawl with anticipation. Tyler. Skylar gasps as we reach the temple's threshold, her hand gripping my arm with desperate strength. You have to fight it. Don't let the curse choose victory over Connor's safety. But her words sound distant through the roar of hunger that drowns out everything else. The final confrontation plays out among pillars older than memory, where gods once received sacrifices and prayers from people who understood that some powers demand blood payment for their gifts, and I feel myself becoming something other than human as the curse reaches its crescendo. Connor's terrified face becomes the only thing that matters as I watch myself through his eyes. Seeing the monster, I'm becoming reflected in the innocence I'm supposed to protect. And for one terrible moment I understand exactly why every alpha in my lineage has ultimately fallen to the darkness that flows through our veins like liquid destruction.
The ancient temple's altar stands before us like a judgment seat carved from starlight and shadow, its surface worn smooth by countless generations of desperate souls who came seeking divine intervention in their darkest hours. And I realize with crystalline clarity that this moment will determine whether love truly can transform curse into blessing or if some poisons run too deep to purify. Connor trembles in my arms as our enemies close in from all sides, their weapons gleaming silver in the ethereal light that seems to emanate from the very stones beneath our feet, while Tyler stands with his back to us, the curse's influence so complete that he radiates predatory menace even toward his own family. The choice before me crystallizes with terrible simplicity. I can use my toxic blood as a weapon to destroy everyone in this sacred space, including the man I've come to love despite every rational reason to hate him. Or I can watch our enemies tear apart the family we've built from the ashes of revenge and betrayal. Princess Valentina's voice echoes through the ancient columns as she orders the final assault, her royal features twisted with years of festering humiliation that have transformed her into something as monstrous as any curse, while Jaxon prowls at her side like a rabid wolf whose addiction has stripped away everything human except his desperate hunger. Surrender the witch and the bastard child, Valentina commands, her sword pointing directly at Connor's heart, and perhaps your death will be swift rather than the lingering torment you deserve for destroying my wedding day. The words trigger something primal in Tyler that transforms him from conflicted father into apex predator, his roar of challenge shaking dust from the temple's ancient stones, but I see the terrible truth in his eyes, the curse has won. And the man I love no longer fights to protect but to possess. Connor's small hand finds mine as I set him gently on the altar's edge, his innocent trust in his mother's ability to fix everything breaking my heart even as it gives me the strength to attempt something that has never been tried in the long history of our bloodlines. Connor, I whisper, pulling the ceremonial knife from my belt with hands that shake only slightly, do you remember what I taught you about healing? About how love can transform even the most broken things into something beautiful? His solemn nod gives me permission to proceed with the ritual that will either save us all or damn us beyond redemption, and I draw the blade across my palm, watching crimson well up like liquid rubies in the temple's otherworldly light. The blood that has brought only suffering and addiction throughout my cursed existence pools in my cupped hand, and when I offer it to Connor, I see understanding dawn in his bright eyes that seem older than his years in this moment of cosmic significance. Not to drink, I explain as our enemies hesitate, sensing the power building around us, but to mix with yours, to awaken the gift that runs in your veins and use it to heal rather than harm. Connor's small blade creates a matching cut on his palm without hesitation, his complete trust in me humbling and terrifying in equal measure, and when our blood mingles on the altar's surface, the temple itself seems to hold its breath in anticipation. The transformation begins with warmth that spreads from our joined hands like sunrise breaking over frozen landscape, Connor's unique heritage awakening as his blood neutralizes my toxicity and amplifies it into something that has never existed before, healing that transcends individual bodies to touch souls themselves. Waves of purifying energy ripple outward from the altar with Connor as their focal point, his mixed bloodline finally fulfilling the destiny that made him so dangerous to those who profit from curses and addiction, and I watch in amazement as the power washes over our enemies with gentle inexorability. Jaxon staggers as his addiction crumbles like sand castles before the tide, his eyes clearing for the first time in years as the desperate hunger that has driven him to madness simply ceases to exist, leaving behind a broken man who remembers what it felt like to be whole. Tyler's transformation is even more dramatic as 7 generations of ancestral curse burn away like mist before dawn, his features softening as the predatory hunger leaves his eyes and reveals the man he was always meant to be beneath the poison that has defined his bloodline since time immemorial. Princess Valentina drops her weapon as the waves of healing energy strip away the bitter poison of her wounded pride, leaving her face naked with the recognition of how far she has fallen from the noble ideals she once embodied, and tears stream down her cheeks as she sees clearly for the first time in years. The temple fills with profound silence as friend and foe alike stand transformed by Connor's gift, their weapons forgotten in the face of healing that reaches deeper than flesh to mend the fundamental breaks in their souls. And I realize that my perfect revenge has become something far more precious, universal redemption. Months later, as autumn paints the leaves around our sanctuary in shades of gold and crimson, Tyler and I work side by side in the garden we've planted together, watching Connor chase butterflies while the refugees who have found their way to us build homes among the trees that remember what it means to shelter the broken until they become whole again. The healing center we've established draws pilgrims from across the realm, all seeking the miracle that flows through our son's veins, and I find profound satisfaction in using my restored gifts to mend what years of bitterness and pride have torn apart. Tyler's hand finds mine as we watch our son demonstrate his gift to a group of newly arrived seekers, his patient explanations and gentle touch transforming fear into hope with the same ease that once marked him as too dangerous to live, and I marvel at how love has rewritten every story I thought I knew about destiny and revenge.
I'm so glad that you stay with me till the end. Like, subscribe, and let me know what would you change, what do you like about the story. See you in the next chapter, my beloved listeners.